Hey everybody, Nicholas Luna here. I go by Nick. I'm a professional photographer. I've been shooting portraiture for 2 years. Before portraiture, I shot landscape, night skates, and infrared. And today I want to discuss 5 mistakes I made as a photographer when I first got started, at least professionally. There's some great content here on YouTube, wonderful content that goes over techniques that other photographers see that beginners make. I spent about 10 hours on YouTube watching all of them. They have great, wonderful content and great ideas, but I want to go over things that I struggled with personally that I haven't seen on any of those channels, or at least not on a lot of them. So number 5 on my list, one thing I really struggled with when I first got started is I thought I needed the best equipment. I needed all the Nikkor stuff. I needed a full frame Nikon camera, you know, a D710 or a D810 or the D850, which is my dream camera. But as I started working with the camera I could afford, which is actually what I'm using to film this because I just got another new camera. The camera I'm using to film this is a Nikon D5100. It's 16 megapixels. On eBay they go for $120 to $150 with a halfway decent lens usually, some batteries and accessories. I've shot professionally with this camera for the last 2 years. I've shot for magazines, I've shot for Instagram influencers, I've done stuff for my own personal portfolio, I've done cosplay photography, cars, real estate, and even events with this camera, and it has been a wonderful camera for me. I think when I bought it, I paid $175 for it, but it came with 3 batteries and a bag, which is super awesome. And it's been a great little camera. The lens I primarily use with this camera, and it is a crop sensor camera, so the lens I primarily use is a 50 millimeter, I don't know how to say this word, I think it's Yongnuo. It was an $80 lens that I got on Amazon. It's 50 millimeter f1.8, which it's a really fast lens. I'll show some examples real quick of the kind of work I did with a 16 megapixel camera and a $80 lens on Amazon. So Sigma also makes wonderful lenses. Some of them are really expensive and they're on the top end, and they make a lot of really good budget lenses. Another thing that I have personally done is I purchased a 35 millimeter Nikkor lens, which is usually a relatively expensive lens, but I got it what is that word I'm looking for? They take it apart, they clean it, they put it back together, and then they ship it to you, and it's fantastic. It's like a repaired unit, but it's used. So the used market for Nikons is amazing. They've been using the same bayonet style mount for years. I think since the 70s. I think I have a Nikon FG 35 millimeter camera that uses the exact same lens as all my DSLRs do. Another thing, the camera I just bought, and I actually just got done with my first shoot with that camera, is the Nikon D5300. The camera is on average between $300 and $350 on eBay. It's 24 megapixels, and I will show some of examples with that camera here. So that's my number 5 on my list of, mistakes I've personally made, thinking I needed the best equipment. Let's move on to number 4. So number 4 on my list is jumping into manual mode first thing. A lot of people say you have to shoot manual to shoot professional, and while that is true, there's a lot of modes on your camera that will help you get to that point. The biggest mode I still use other than manual mode is aperture priority mode. Aperture priority mode means that you set your f-stop on your lens or on your camera to where you want it, and it'll adjust the speed of the camera for you to match that aperture. It's fantastic for doing portraits. Aperture, I'll have to do an entire video on the importance of aperture, because changing your aperture and your f-stop will make your images pop. It changes everything about it, especially with portraiture. So there's aperture, there's automatic, there's all these different priority modes. Know your camera, know what all the settings do, know what lighting, how it all works before you jump into manual mode, because then you'll get discouraged. That's one thing I felt. I felt extremely discouraged when I jumped straight into manual mode because everything said I had to be in manual mode. That discouragement really hindered my progress as a photographer, as I struggled to learn, lighting techniques and aperture and ISO and all of that while struggling because I jumped straight into manual mode. try automatic for a little bit, get used to your camera, slowly learn everything and move forward from there. You can take awesome photos in automatic. You'll notice the difference when you jump from automatic to aperture priority and from aperture priority to manual. It is a wonderful sense of accomplishment. You just have to get there, and learning the basics of your camera will definitely get you there. And I'll do a whole video on aperture, I'll do a whole video on ISO, the light triangle, all of that is really important. But yeah, number 4 is definitely jumping straight into manual mode. Everything tells you gotta be in manual mode. Manual mode is important. It is, it really is important, but knowing your camera and knowing what everything does takes priority. And then when you jump into manual mode, it'll be a lot easier, you'll transition easier, and your photos will really pop. So the third thing I want to discuss, and I'll give you a little bit of backstory before I jump into it, is I come from the world of film. In high school, and even with landscape and night, I was shooting a lot of film photography. So for a long time when I got into digital, I thought, I can do everything in the camera. I don't need to edit. Now, I hindered myself a lot by having that stance. There are things that the camera can do that are amazing. I still do a lot of lighting tricks. I still do long exposure, portraiture, and all of that stuff. Here's an example. In order to get those results that I want. But editing is really important. There's a lot of great programs out there. I subscribe to the Adobe program with Lightroom and Photoshop personally, but there's fantastic programs out there. GIMP is one that I used for a long time because it was free, and there's several other third-party ones that are free or low cost and you don't have to do the subscription. I just use Adobe because of the amount of tools it gives me as a professional. If I do a large shoot, an event, or real estate, I have all my presets in Lightroom, so when I export the photos, it's right there. Another thing too is, filters. Everything's about filters anymore. So you have like Alien Skin and all these other programs that apply these filters to give you these awesome effects. And what really got me headed in the direction of editing was when I found out all the editing that old-timey photographers did in the darkroom. Silver film or color film can be manipulated in the darkroom much like Photoshop does, and once I found that out I realized that I was just kind of being high and mighty thinking I could do everything in the camera. And once I swallowed that and realized that my art could be done tenfold better and look better, and this is what the clients expected, I knew that I had to get into editing. Now the flip side of that is over-editing. You can definitely over-edit to where your client or the model you're working with looks fake, or they look plastic, or everything's too soft, or everything's too sharp. There's a fine line, and there's some I use YouTube for this as well. There's some fantastic editing tutorials on YouTube for these third programs, as well as Lightroom and Photoshop. So I would definitely give them a look, check it out. Just remember, there's a lot of things you can do in camera, but you hinder yourself by sticking only to that. So the second thing I want to discuss is composition. I was terrible at composing photos. Example. I keep those on my computer to this day as a reminder of how far I've come. But yeah, composition is important. What really helped me is I had a good friend of mine tell me about sketchbooks. Sketchbooks are great for figuring out composition. Any art, really, drawing, sketching, painting, all of it is about composition. You don't want those boring, here, let me try to do it real quick, your Sears photos. Everyone knows this photos, right? Sears, it's a fake smile, like that. Compared to, when you turn and you give a little look and you give soft, it doesn't look as good for me, but I promise you, I'll show an example. That's the difference in composition. The difference between a mug shot and a very beautiful portrait or a glamour shot. Another thing that really helped me with composition is almost like an internship, I worked as a photography assistant. I still do to this day, actually. The studio we're in right now, me and her share it. Her name is Shayla. She taught me so much about composition, a lot of posing, Pinterest. Pinterest is magical for posing. I have entire boards dedicated to posing, depending on what shoot I'm doing. So if I'm doing a glamour shoot, I've got an entire board dedicated to glamour shooting. And you know, a lot of times when you're working with clients, they don't have as much experience with modeling. So the Pinterest really helps. I can show them a photo and be like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Let's try to tweak it a little bit. We can make it our own, but the composition is there. So learning composition was an extremely important part of getting to where I am now as a photographer. It went from me doing Sears photos, you know, your boring Sears photos. Nothing against Sears photographers. There's a certain thing that's expected. But a Sears photo, or JCPenney's photo, or the mall kiosk photos, and really standing out as a portrait photographer. Not only with portraiture, but if you're looking to get published in magazines, you have to have good composition. No one wants a boring black background or a boring white background or one of those weird red felt background. Everyone, from Christmas time, the Christmas time ones. Magazines don't publish that. Everyone can shoot that. You really need to make yourself stand out. And in order to do so, you have to learn composition. It's not just posing the body, it's props, it's furniture, it's the way you have the model sitting. One of the most important things with composition that I learned is you always focus on the eyes and you always shoot at eye level. So if the model lays down, I will lay down. If the model's standing up, I will stand up. If they're kind of in a weird squatting, kneeling position, I will do the weird squatting, kneeling position no matter how badly my legs get cramped, to make sure that the eye is the focus. Always focus on the eye. It doesn't matter what else is blurry, and always shoot from eye level. Unless you're doing some cool like artistic shots. Like with all rules, rules are there to be broken. If you come up with a really cool shot, like this one that's not at eye level, or this one that's not at eye level, to create a really cool composition, absolutely do it. The best thing I know though is start with the rules and then you can break the rules. And the only reason for that is you understand why you do it that way, and then you can tweak it so it still looks good. So that's number two. Number two was learning composition. Composition is extremely important and something that I struggled a lot with when I first got started as a photographer. Number one, and I still struggle to this day with this one, and it's something I've seen a lot of photographers struggle with that I haven't seen a lot of discussion about, and that's confidence in your shoot. When I first got started, I turned down a lot of really, really awesome shoots because I wasn't confident in my ability to do the shoot. Not just my editing ability, because I wasn't editing at the time, but I still struggled with it after I started editing. But also my equipment. I thought my equipment wasn't as good. And everything that we have discussed so far kind of plays into this and where I'm getting at. So confidence in the shoot. When you have someone approach you, like you have your portfolio on Instagram or Facebook on your website, and someone reaches out to you, messages you, calls you, emails you, when someone reaches out to you, they've seen your portfolio, and they believe that you have the ability to do the shoot that they're looking for. They've seen your portfolio, they have their inspiration, and they've contacted you. I said no to a lot of shoots like that, and I regret it, because those shoots would have been amazing, but not only would the shoots have been amazing, but I think that I could have really used the experience, and I could have used the work in my portfolio. I was really scared to do those shoots. I felt that if someone's going to pay me to do this shoot and I mess it up, that makes me look bad. And I think that I know that hindered me a lot in my abilities as a photographer. By staying conservative and reserved and just doing the same thing over and over and over, I ended up with a portfolio of different people in all the same style. It was the same photo but with 12 different people, and I stopped getting messages, I stopped getting emails, I stopped getting calls because it was all of the same. So once I started working with Shayla as her photo assistant, I was pushed. I was kind of forced into these situations where I wasn't confident with my ability, but as I did these shoots and realized that, yeah, I can do this, and my confidence grew, I was able to start branching out on my own. I was able to start doing these photo shoots that before would have made me extremely uncomfortable, and it has really made my portfolio pop. Confidence is a hard one. It really is. It's hard to push yourself. It's hard to be that drive when you feel down on your abilities, and as artists, we're our own worst critics. But just remember, if someone reaches out to you, they've seen your work, they've seen your portfolio, and they absolutely believe that you are the best person for the job that they've contacted you about. I have a PS because I don't think the video is long enough, because I didn't ramble as much as I anticipated going into this. So here's some notable extras. The first notable extra I have: shoot consistently. I don't mean technique-wise. Try new things, always be on the lookout for cool composition, all that jazz. Shoot consistently. Try to shoot as often as you can. It doesn't matter if you're shooting your dog, your cat, your fish, your furniture. If you go out and shoot, take photos of cars, landscapes, every little bit is going to help you learn lighting, it's going to help you learn technique, it's going to help you learn all the things that you can apply later into portraiture, if that's what you're looking to do. But shoot consistently, shoot always. I'm not one of those that is like, I take my camera everywhere. I find that to be distracting. If my camera's always with me, then I pay attention more to the camera than my girlfriend or my dog or whatever I'm doing. But at least shoot once a week. Go out, do some shooting. I personally don't do street photography. I have in the past. It's great practice. Again, composition, technique. You gotta learn your camera, all the settings. That's a big problem I had, is I would go 2-3 weeks or even a month or 2 months between shoots, and then I'd have to relearn everything I learned. So that turned into a whole nother thing. But shoot consistently. And I don't mean technique, I mean always be shooting, or at least once a week. And shoot everything. The more you learn, the more you can apply into your technique as you build your portfolio. Another thing that I want to discuss from earlier is over-editing. Over-edit some photos. Pick a photo and over-edit it. You don't have to share it on your portfolio. No one has to see it but you, but learn all the cool little things. Be like, wow, this photo looks a million, you might surprise yourself. You might try to be conservative with your portfolio, and that's fine, but over-edit something. You have to do it at least once. You absolutely do. It's a very liberating feeling, just being like, and I want this to be black, and I want this to be green, and I want fire. If you look at my portfolio, you're going to see a lot of fire. We shoot a lot with candles. I don't know why, but we shoot a lot with candles. And that's another PSS, props. I used to think that, oh, the model will carry it. But a lot of the times the model does carry it. But props really add a pop. You don't want the prop to take over the photo, but it definitely makes the photo pop. And anything you can do to make your photo pop and your photo to stand out in the ocean of photographers will help you in the long run. So shoot consistently. This is like my extra, my added bonus. Over-edit something and play with props. Everything is more fun with props, I promise. PSS, my friend that's here, the one that taught me about sketchbooks and painting books for composition, told me to specify. When I say shoot your fish, shoot your dog, shoot your cat, I mean with the camera. We live in a weird age right now, like a really weird age. Photograph your cat, photograph your dog, photograph your fish. Go out and photograph stuff. That's what I meant. So that's my 5 mistakes I made as a beginner photographer that really hindered me as a photographer that hopefully I can help you with. And that's my 3 PSS's. So I hope to see you guys in the next video. I will be doing a review of my budget 50mm lens. You guys have a good one.